At the beginning of the 1990s, the Suzuki Motor Corporation was at a crossroads. The company had reinvented itself countless times, but now a fierce argument raged inside their own corporate headquarters in Hamamatsu, Japan. Should the company build a so-called middleweight sport bike? A motorcycle with a smaller 600cc engine? Traditionally, middleweight sport bikes got customers into showrooms, but didn't make much money.
They were just kind of a lost leader for a lot of the companies.
Eventually, there was a consensus. In 1992, Suzuki introduced a new model called the GSXR 600. With a 600cc engine, it had a smaller motor than the GSXR 750. But smaller didn't have to mean slower.
People may not remember the GSXR 600 was the first truly trick 600 to come along. 600s were always kind of dulled down. They didn't have adjustable suspension. They might not have had this and that and the other. They didn't have the trick foot pegs. They were just kind of a lost leader for a lot of the companies. But Suzuki decided, let's put adjustable suspension on the 600, and they really led the charge with the GSXR 600.
The original GSXR 600 led to an entirely new model line that emphasized more power and less weight.
So you get on a 600 and you have this thing that's lighter, it's revvier, it feels easier to change direction on, and it just seems a little more human size, you know?
If you've ridden one, it's like you're dancing with it. I mean, it's that kind of a partner. It's what do you want to do now? Let's do that.
The GSXR 600 is called a middleweight sport bike. And while it received great reviews, Suzuki was intent on winning the heavyweight crown. To do that would require another reinvention of the GSXR. In 2001, Suzuki made the long-rumored secret public. It showed the world the GSXR 1000, a motorcycle that had been under development for 3 years.
A lot of people really don't know what goes into the building a motorcycle. They think the parts just appear and they put them together, but there is just so much R&D behind each part of a motorcycle. It takes a couple years to really do a bike from scratch.
The first GSXR 1000 was an instant game changer. The bike had a 988cc engine that produced an astonishing 160 horsepower and offered Ferrari-like performance for a fraction of the price.
On the seat, when you ride it, you can't believe it's 1,000. I mean, you can believe it's 1,000 when the throttle's open, because it's shocking. It's shocking how far it accelerates. But mid-corner, it feels small under you. It wants to turn. It wants to change direction mid-corner if you need to. It'll tighten up its line.
From 2000 to 2008, Suzuki's GSXR 1000 has won the American Motorcycle Association Racing Championship for an unprecedented 8 out of 9 years.
We think that the AMA race is the most precious and also most important race in the United States. So we are always concentrate to the AMA race.
GSXR is an institution. It brought racing to the masses. Race bike with lights, truly for sale, at a price that you can actually afford, you could go buy. I mean, it's just amazing.
To describe the GSXR 1000, words don't do it justice. You need to watch someone like Matt Mladen ride the thing and see that they can do just about anything on it, faster than anybody in the nation.
Mladen has been so successful in the GSX-R 1000 that fans not only expect him to win, they expect him to dominate every race.
Nowadays, winning's not enough, you know, because we've been doing it so much. Everyone's like, oh, if you only win by 5 seconds, it's like, okay, what's going on, you know, so...
Some of the most intense pressure on Mladen to win comes from Mladen himself.
Coming second isn't a great result, and being on the podium is not a great result, but winning is a great result. The GSX-R line of motorcycles has been very, very good. There's no doubt about that.
This is where winning or losing begins. The Takasuka engine plant in Hamamatsu, Japan. The engine plant is part of a complex the size of 52 football fields. This is where the heart and soul of every Suzuki motorcycle is built. Including the 163 horsepower engine of the GSX-R 1000. During peak production, the engine line runs day and night. 962 workers assembling 1,800 engines a day. That translates into 700,000 engines a year. Surprisingly, building the engine is done by hand. There are no robots or automation. It is a mix of new technology with classic engine construction.
New high-tech equipment, and there's also some old equipment. There's a lot of handwork, engine assembly.
There are 24 different stations along the engine assembly line. There is little wasted motion. At each station, workers perform several different tasks in just 3 to 4 minutes.
It's amazing to me how quick they can assemble an engine, put it together, get it to tolerances.
From start to finish, it takes just over 1 hour to build a new GSX-R 1000 engine.
The organisation in the place was what got me. Just so many things going on, yet everything was in place, everything was in line, and that's the Japanese way of doing things too, you know. These guys have got it together, there's no doubt about that.
The final step on the engine assembly line is a compression test. It almost sounds like the engine's running, but it's not. An electric motor is spinning the engine, and what sounds like an exhaust system is really the sound of a pressure gauge measuring the airflow inside the new engine. 30 miles away from the engine plant is Suzuki's Toyokawa final assembly facility in Aichi, Japan. If you've ever ridden a Suzuki motorcycle, this is where it was built. Final assembly may sound simple, but it's not. There are more than 330 different components that must be put together to build just one GSX-R 1000. The first step is the frame. 5 cast aluminum pieces held in a jig are welded together by a robot. It's about the only automation used in the entire factory. From here, virtually everything will be done by hand. Next step, welding the GSX-R's unique 2-part fuel tank. Most motorcycle tanks use 3 pieces. With only 2 pieces, the Suzuki process is quicker and the finished tank shows less welded seams. Every new tank is then pressurized with air, flipped upside down, and submerged into a water-filled tub. They're looking for air bubbles, which would indicate the tank was leaking. After the tank and other body parts are painted, it's time to apply the GSX-R graphics. Every single one is done by hand. There are no bubbles or scratches in the artwork. And if you've ever tried to put on a sticker without getting any air bubbles, you know just how difficult that is.